this is the case. Again, this is Vishnu, who's not really Vishnu. But Vishnu is a 33-year-old married Indian man, and he came to treatment seeking relief from anxiety. He initially identified it as work-related and then brought it to, quote, too many thoughts in general. So this is a guy who has a graduate degree in engineering. He is employed as a chief financial officer in a corporation, and he panics on a regular basis that he's going to be in some meeting and somebody's going to ask a question he's not going to know the answer to. And you know, you can get CBT all day long and say, well, gee, when was the last time that happened? He'll kind of go, never. But that gets about, you know, that deep. So this was our fourth session. He was speaking about the incessant chatter in his head. He characterized it as this part of me. I said I invited him to anticipate having an opportunity to speak with this part of himself and asked him what he would like to ask it, what he wanted to know. Now, I know where I'm going at this point. He has no idea where I'm going. So this guy is sitting on my couch and he says, I've got this incessant chatter, this part of me. And so I said, well, what would you like to know from it? You know, what would you want it to tell you? His first question was, what's right for me? The second question is, what's wrong with failing? His third question was, how did you take so much of me? Remember that question. And then, when will you go away? Okay? And so then I invited him to go find another place where this part of him could sit and express himself. And he sat there, and I said, you know, what should we call that? And he said, Vishnu. And I said, no, that's you. He said, no, this is like the Indian god Vishnu. It's omnipresent in that kind of way. It's Vishnu. I said, well, then what will we call you? He said, oh, my friends call me VC. Okay, so you'll be VC. So now we've got these two separate parts. So again, you know, how we structure it, and this is utilization of other. I'm aware of Indian culture, not greatly aware of it, but I know that there's this pantheon of gods in the Indian culture. And, you know, I'm asking him, you know, what Vishnu represents. Happens to be the destroyer, but that's a whole different conversation. And again, you know, the importance of structuring it. You know, this is Vishnu, and this is VC. And he sat over here and began to kind of clarify it, as people routinely do. And I said, I'm happy to answer those questions, but if you're going to be VC, I need you to sit back over here. You know, and the intention of the preamble and gestures is to facilitate and promote the dissociation. You know, I'm talking to Vishnu and I'm talking to VC. Now, he's not sitting there, but my gesture of that person is there is part of reifying and promoting that dissociation. That's the use of self, utilization of self, and the use of gestures to facilitate the work that we're doing. And then, you know, again, here's where it's clinician's choice. You can present Vishnu with all four questions at once, but depending on your assessment of who this person is, are they going to get lost in the weeds of that? Is it better to present one question at a time? And there's not a right or wrong answer to that. It's just your assessment of who this person is and how they'll best respond to the experience. Given his tendency to get a little divergent and, you know, kind of going down rabbit holes, I posed each question at a time. You know, the first question, what's right for me? And he is sitting in the chair as he's moved from the couch onto the recliner, and he is Vishnu. And he's talking to VC, or he's asking you, and I repeat, so you heard, you know, VC's question, what's right for me? And so now I'm looking at Vishnu, looking for the answer to VC's question, what's right for me? And again, my movement of my head reifies that there are two separate entities here. And Vishnu's answer, I've been through a lot with him, and I've seen how he felt in those moments of failure or put down. Okay. Now, you're the person who's reporting this incessant chatter. And very few people say, and I'm so glad to have that. I mean, it just comforts me all day long. Okay? And Vishnu is speaking about watching what he has endured when he has experienced failure and or been put down. What do you hear about the character of Vishnu at that moment? Well, he's remembering what he's been through, yeah.
Vulnerability.
Right.
That's true. Does it happen every time you fail? What the hell happens?
Right. but he's
Almost a defensive part.
it's protective.
Protective part.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
He's borne witness to the pain this guy has suffered and doesn't want him to endure it. So the second question, so I said, and you heard VC's second question. He was asking you, what's wrong with failing? And Vishnu's response is, I guess it's not as bad if you can handle the failure, but the feeling that come to you and the loss you experience are not worth failing for. Now listen to his language. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. I guess it's not as bad if you could handle failure, but the feeling that come to you and the loss you experience are not worth failing for. What's that reflective of? It's successful dissociation. Vishnu is speaking to VC. It's not me, it's not I, it's not we, it's not us, it's you. Okay? He has successfully dissociated those two parts. Part of that is because I'm insisting that he do it, and I'm talking to VC who's not there, and I'm addressing Vishnu as Vishnu. And by the way, when I do this and I have this part come into the room for the first time, I typically employ some variant of hospitality. I'm really glad you're here. We've not formally met. And depending on who I'm working with, I'm either Rob or Dr. Staffen. And you are. And, they'll often give me the name that the person decides. Occasionally, they'll give me a whole nother name, and I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on here? And that's all right. I mean, you just got to roll with it. But again, it's the opportunity to begin to facilitate and promote that dissociation. I'm getting to know you, not that person over there. I want to know you. And what's your story? Where'd you come from? And I'm going to get to that in the second case. This idea of where does this person come from? And where do they go? Is there a question? Just a sharp inhalation. The third question. How did you take so much of me? Okay. And again, VC is asking this of Vishnu. And there's that, how did you do that to me, or take that from me? Again, we're promoting the dissociations manifest. So he says, Vishnu is speaking in the first person, so note he's adopted that role of the character Vishnu. I couldn't answer exactly, but it just happened over the years. He kept relying on me, and I just kept on taking over for comfort and stability. Okay, so now if I've experienced this incessant chatter as a pain in my butt, and in fact, I'm learning, I'm hearing, because VC is sitting here, hearing what Vishnu is saying, he took over for comfort and stability. Oh, comfort is good. I could do some little more comfort and stability in my life. I like that. And so this is where we're playing with that object relationship. I'm not experiencing you as an enemy that is haranguing me all day long. You're an ally who's working to protect me. So what impact does that have on my experience of the incessant chatter in the future? I think about the sounds of silence. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk to you again. And I'll say something like that because it's got my old friend in it, because he's experienced this for a long time. But I'm working to alter that experience of the voices, and I want it to be a friendly voice. That when he experiences it, the experience can be qualitatively different. This is the benefit of experiential psychotherapy. Okay, this is why it's the experiential X-ray. That is, I am having the experience of being in the role of Vishnu, as I am having the experience of being VC, hearing Vishnu's answers to my questions about, who are you? How'd you get here? What are you doing? It's the experience that, it's not top down, it's experiential up, I believe. The answer to the third question, I couldn't answer exactly, but it just happened over the years. He kept relying on me, and I just kept on taking over for comfort and stability. And note the development of this imbalance is rooted in the patient surrendering his power and abilities for a sense of perceived comfort and stability. So I'm happy to give up of myself. if I believe that I'm gonna get comfort and stability as a result of having done so. Right? That's how this kind of dynamic developed according to him. And so what's in, again, now we're clinicians and we're thinking, okay, if we understand that, the way that you got so powerful was I acquiesced my power to receive comfort and stability. Okay? Now, I've got a master's degree, I'm gainfully employed, I'm happily married. What's in it for me now? And this is the kind of clinical question that we're going to ask. You know, the implication that the resources that he has now, as opposed to where he experienced himself at the time that Vishnu got developed, are qualitatively different. And this is the hypnotic repair piece, allowing him to appreciate that he is a competent, capable, successful man. And how, you can't just tell somebody that, I mean, you can, but it doesn't really sink in too deeply. Okay? And so you have Vishnu, for example, tell him, what is it you admire about VC? Dude, the guy's got game. You know, the way that he manages things at work, the relationship that he's got with his wife. I mean, I watch the two of them, and it's beautiful to bear witness to. VC doesn't hear this from Vishnu on a regular basis. When we orchestrate this situation and we invite this kind of commentary, we're engaging in the hypnotic repair. Okay? So the final question, and this was, I'm going to contrast this vignette with the next one, because the way he responds to this question and the way the second guy responds to the same question, it's diametrically opposed. So the final question, when will you go away? And so this is me having written down the questions that VC asked before he even knew that Vishnu was coming. Vishnu is now seated in the chair, and I'm asking the question for VC because I don't want VC to have, Vishnu is now created, and I don't want to disrupt that by moving him back here to have VC read the question that so I took notes. So when will you go away? And it was asked with a suppressed chuckle. When VC originally asked the question, he kind of chuckled, as in like, you know, haha, you're never going away. And the part's answer was, when he doesn't need me. So again, the language reflects the dissociation, not when I'm no longer needed, when he doesn't need me. And so again, here's where we get to be a little more directive. Who makes that determination? This is my question to Vishnu. He says, when he doesn't need me, and I say, who gets to make that determination? Now again, if we're routinely doing assessment in the course of our clinical work, and this guy has ceded his power to another part, and you're going to see at the end of this, he's asking me a question about something, and he's doing the same thing. It's a parallel. He's doing it with me. I'm the authority. He wants me to provide him with the answers. And I'm like, pal, not happening. You're the man here. You're the one that's taking care of this. You're doing it. And that's a clinical intervention. By not meeting that request and giving him the power to answer it, I'm implanting the responsibility, the power back within him. But I got ahead of myself. So, who makes that determination? The part's answer to my question was, ultimately, I would. Okay. Now, a lot of times when I do this sort of experiential X-ray, this kind of parts work, there is this almost like sense of a parasitic relationship, where the part can just obliterate the self in all different kinds of ways, but they won't kill them, literally and metaphorically. They will not kill them, because there's an understanding that if they go, I go, and they don't want to go. And I'm not clear what the energy or the life force is on this. I have to talk to Phil about that one. By the way, Phil called this morning. He had a clinical emergency. He was sorry he couldn't join us. But people will often be reluctant to let the part go. Again, as we're working clinically, part of what we're doing is we're intentionally renegotiating the internal relationship. Okay? So if I want to mute the substance abusing part, how do I do that? If I want to, invite the little girl to feel that she's got the power of the adult. How do I do that? I want the adult to feel that she's not lonely because she's got the little girl with her and she can grow that little girl. Which, again, going back to that first vignette, has wonderful parallels because this woman is pregnant for the first time and is terrified that she's going to be the kind of mother that her mother was. And so I'm inviting her to be a parent to this little girl, and her succeeding in doing that has kind of future implications for your capacity to parent. And that's completely implicit. There's nothing explicit at all about that. And whether she recognized that or not, doesn't matter. It's one of those, it's like, you know, why do you give somebody vitamin C or vitamin B when they show up in an emergency room? Well, you don't know, okay, but, and there's absolutely no harm in giving vitamin B, and you could prevent neurodegeneration, right? Scurvy, that's not scurvy, it's, what is it? Come on, Doc. When I was in the ER, Jacoby, any person that showed up in the ER got a shot of vitamin B, because you have no idea about their nutritional intake and you can't harm them by giving them vitamin B. You can only prevent neurological damage. Alcoholics are routinely malnourished. So doing what I'm doing in terms of promoting her skill as a parent is, it's like giving vitamin B. It can't possibly harm her. It could only be good. And there's no reason not to.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just for clarification,
Right.
when
Oh, you're on your own with this.
when
Yes, sorry.
Vishnu said,
You give them the clean drink and this one.
yeah, now I'm getting hot. So when Vishnu said that, why he sticks around
Yeah.
because you need me.
Right.
And then you asked the question, well, who determines when
Right.
you won't be needed anymore?
Right.
Is that question posed to both parts or just to Vishnu?
I posed it to Vishnu,
Okay.
because he was the one who was providing that answer. But I wanted VC to hear, and I know that he's gonna hear because he's in the room.
Uh-huh.
But I posed it to Vishnu.
Okay.
And then, so he gets into this. So again, you know, going back to the idea of the internal relationship and the object relationship, as you move the person physically back and forth, okay, I think it's almost like, and I've never thought of this before, but it's almost like, you know, tapping in EMDR. You know, is there some kind of integration achieved in doing that? I don't know. But if it's not gonna hurt, it can't hurt. And again, the idea that, you know, when you're having them here, and you're talking to them as Vishnu, and then they go back here and they're VC, and you speak to them. Now, you just heard what Vishnu said, and how does that resonate with you? Okay, so you're kind of ensuring that it's not just me having a conversation with this part, me having a conversation with that part. It's that they're having an interaction with that other part. Yeah.
Rob, I'm sorry, what did, Vishnu say, when you said to him,
Yeah.
how long are you needed, or when will
Right,
you go
right.
away? And he said what?
So the
What
answer
did-
to
What did he say, Vishnu?
right, when he doesn't need me. And who makes that determination? He said, I do. And then, so here, again, this is, you know, kind of clinician's choice. How and what do you choose to pursue? I mean, we're routinely confronted with choice points in the course of therapy. The person's affect was incongruent with the content of what they were saying. Do we comment on that facial display? Do we comment on that affect? Or do we just focus on the content of what they said? You know, they came late, they came early, they didn't come early. What do you choose to focus on? Do I intervene with a story? Do I intervene with a metaphor? Do I intervene with a joke? What do I do? How do I do it? When do I do it? Why do I do it? We're always having these choice points in the course of therapy. And so how you guys will do this in your own way is the joy of getting to do this work. For whatever reason, I was really curious about this character and what was his origin and what was his destiny. And so I said in response to, you know, when he doesn't need me anymore, I said, if he were ready, where would you go? And the part answered, I don't know, probably into the space somewhere. Okay. Now, this is a man from India, and there's a belief system about, you know, reincarnation and gods, and, okay, so for this guy to have that system available to him as part of what informs his narrative, I've got that somewhere in the back of my mind. And I followed up that question, how will that be for you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know, because going into space somewhere, well, that could be terrifying. The answer was, oh, and by the way, how will that be for you? Note the implied presupposition, that you will in fact do that. He will get to a point where he doesn't need you. You will go off into space. How will that be for you? The implication is that in fact you will achieve that progression. And the part replied, probably liberating. And as a final clarification, I commented, for you, not VC, to which point the part replied, yeah. Okay. So again, if I am VC and I've got this part and it's gonna leave if I get better, well, you know, if I'm sociopathic and I'm a jerk, I don't care what happens to it. But this is a compassionate guy. You know, he's a really tender, sweet guy. And so for him to know that that part is gonna be okay, it will experience liberation when it's no longer caring and protecting him. It makes it easier to let it go. And again, it's just, you know, ask me why I asked that series of questions. I don't routinely ask those questions. There's just something in that moment I'm asking those questions. So now he's sort of back as VC. You know, we kind of wrap this experience up. And so at this point, the part is invited to return to being the patient. I remind the person that they have been seated, they've been sitting there. So he's back in his chair. And I say, now Vishnu's been seated over there and he's been answering these questions. And review the answers. Now following this review, in this case, you know, I'm asking, what was that like for you? And this guy has this profound epiphany. And he says, no, the part speaks to speaks to VC for a last time. And he says, I know you don't need me. You just have to let go. There's nothing wrong with you. You just have to be yourself. I mean, how nice is it to get that message? If you've ceded your power to this other entity, and they say, no, you don't need me. Just be yourself. That's a very affirming message. And so, you know, this is me talking to you guys. Take a moment and experience yourself being the recipient of those words. I know you don't need me. You just have to let go. There's nothing wrong with you. You just have to be yourself. How does that feel to hear that? I think it puts Robin to sleep.
No, probably. I'm just thinking.
I'm just thinking about attachment, and maybe that's a message he didn't receive enough of in
Yeah,
his
it's the
own
ultimate parental
attachment
affirmation.
Yeah. Which is an interesting history. So here's a guy who grew up in India, scored a 95 on the math exam, scored a 94 on the science exam. His dad's a pediatrician and said, oh, you did better in math, go to engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Did not want competition from this kid.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
So at the close of this experience, VC expressed his amazement. He reported feeling a profound sense of relief and was shocked by, quote, how easy it was.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of this. This is not a cognitive process. So as I was writing this up, I remembered that when I was an undergraduate, which is even longer ago than when I was at Jacoby Deere. She started it. I went to a Gestalt therapy demonstration.
Mm.
And the guy asked for volunteers, and I was one of 3 people that volunteered. And so we're sitting up at this little dais, and you know, he says, so what's going on? I said, I'm just tired of the social bullshit. You know, I could walk into a party and know lots of people and act like they were all friends, but the truth of the matter is, you know, they didn't care about me, I didn't care about them. It was just, you know, social bullshit. And so he said, why don't you take it out and place it at your feet? So I've got this thing at my feet. He says, now tell it to talk to me, talk to you. So I looked at it and I say, talk to me. Nothing. And I'm just waiting and nothing. He says, okay, now tell it, don't talk to me. And so I say, don't talk to me. And immediately, out of my mouth flies, I won't. I'm like, whoa, where does this stuff come from? You know? And so that experience, I didn't know how easy it could be. These things just fly out, and it's like, oh, that's cool. So then this is that follow-up I was talking about. So following this characterization of the experience, he reported that he had taken LSD 5 times in his life, okay? And that during the 5th and final occasion, he reported having some sort of cosmic oceanic experience. That was, he described it as, I just felt like I was one with nature, and I'm calling it a cosmic oceanic experience, because that's what they call it in the literature. In which he perceived himself as being at one with the universe. He described the experience initially as, quote, terrifying. But after sharing his fear with his friend, he reported relaxing into the experience and finding it to be quite powerful, at its harmonious core. He added that in the latter part of the trip, he experienced himself coming to the aid of a small boy who was sitting alone in a car. The implication was that this child was a young version of himself. His description conveyed a reciprocally rewarding experience, one in which he, as comforter, felt empowered and good, and the child, as a recipient of care and protection, also felt relieved and safe. Okay? Now again, we could use the opposing mirror strategy here. Be that little boy. Experience yourself alone in the car. What's the temperature? Because if it's the summertime, it could be hot. What's the wet? If it's winter, you know, the seats could be cold, my butt's cold because my pants aren't thick enough to keep me warm in the car in the middle of the winter times. I don't know where my mom, whatever the experience is, you know, and then you can be that presence. And how does he recognize your presence? And so this is just beginning the opposing mirror strategy. That's why I presented it first, because I knew I was going to come back to it here. You can insert it any time. Okay? So this is now, we're back to assessment and strategy and thinking clinically. He then asked me if the 2 experiences, the experiential X-ray and this trip, were related. How do I know, right? And beyond me not knowing, I don't want this young man who routinely cedes his power to other people to use me as the next Vishnu. And so I very mindfully told him honestly, I don't know. You know, he spoke about the ways that the 2 could be related, and I left it as something that he gets to enjoy discovering. Okay? And this is being hypnotic. Okay? That the characterization that the discovery will be enjoyable, the empowerment that he gets to enjoy the discovery, it's all implicit. People aren't thinking about the language that we employ, the way that we employ it, but we're very clearly being suggestive and directing a message. So that's Vishnu.